The guards appeared, seizing Suleiman and dragging him away. Halima followed, her mind racing with conflicting emotions. Anger, betrayal, but also flicker of compassion. The floating village of Makoko, a labyrinth of wooden homes perched precariously on stilts above Lagos Lagoon, was a realm where light and shadow coexisted in an uneasy harmony. By day, the sun glistened off the water, illuminating the lives of the fishermen, traders, and children who navigated the narrow waterways in wooden canoes. But by night, a different energy took hold, a quiet that seems too heavy, too expectant, as though the village itself held its breath. At the edge of this world of light and dark was the palace of King Yusuf, an imposing structure that seems to rise directly from the lagoon, built of intricately carved wood and adorned with golden accents that caught the light of the moon. It was both a symbol of king's power and a reminder of the delicate balance he maintained over his people. It was into this world that Suleiman, a young assassin of the feared order of the Silent Fang, was sent. The order was known across the continent for its unflinching execution of contracts. Its operative trained from childhood to value loyalty and discipline above all else. Suleiman had been chosen for this mission not only for his skill but for his unwavering adherence to the order's code. "King Yusuf is a threat to our cause," said Baba Kanu, the order's stoic leader. His words carried the weight of inevitability. "He must be eliminated before the next full moon." Suleiman knelt before the elders, accepting the mission without question. The dagger handed to him was ceremonial, its hilt engraved with symbols of the order, but its blade was sharp enough to end off the life of King. Baba Kanu's dark eyes bored into Suleiman. "And remember the code. Failure is not an option. If you cannot complete the mission, you know what must be done." "Yes, Baba," Suleiman replied, his voice steady even as a silver of unease crept into his heart. He had eliminated before, but this mission felt different, heavier. Perhaps it was the reputation of King Yusuf, a ruler respected by his people, despite the whisper of his enemies, or perhaps it was the growing whisper of the king's daughter Halima, whose beauty and spirit had reached Suleiman's ears even before he set foot in Makoko. As Suleiman left the chamber, the weight of the dagger in his hand was matched only by the weight of decision that would soon define him. Makoko was alive with activity as Suleiman navigated its narrow waterways in a burrowed canyon. The village was unlikely any he had seen before, a sprawling maze of wooden homes and floating platforms that seems to defy gravity and logic. Life here was precarious yet vibrant. Children laughed as they leaped into the water, women huggled over fresh fish, and traders shouted from their stalls. Suleiman's sharp eyes scanned the scene, noting every detail. The palace stood at the heart of the village, its towering presence both a physical and symbolic reminder of King Yusuf's rule. Guards patrolled its perimeter, their sharp spears glistening in the sunlight. Suleiman had been taught to observe first, act later. Over several days, he studied the rhythm of the palace, the changing of the guards, the flow of the servant, and the rare appearance of the king himself. He discovered that Yusuf often walked the palace grounds at sunset, a habit that made him vulnerable, but only if Suleiman could find a way past the formidable defenses. It was during one of these exploration missions that Suleiman first laid eyes on Halima. She stood on a narrow bridge, her indigo gown blowing gently in the breeze. Around her, children played for her attention, and she responded with warm laughter as she handed out loaves of bread. Her presence was magnetic, her every movement a blend of regal grace and human kindness. Suleiman felt a strange pull in his chest, a sensation foreign to him. He had been trained to view people as targets or obstacles, never as an individual with whom he might connect. Yet as he watched Halima, he could not help but wonder what kind of ruler she might one day become. This distraction was dangerous, and Suleiman knew it. Halima was the daughter of his target, the king he had been sent to eliminate. Allowing himself to be swayed by her charm could jeopardize everything. And yet, as days passed, he found himself watching her more than Palace, his resolve beginning to waver. Fate, it seems, had a sense of irony. Suleiman's chance to meet Halima came not in shadows, but in the light of the chaos. A fire had broken out in a section of the village close to the palace, the flames leaping hungrily from one wooden shack to the next. The air was thick with smoke, and the screams of frightened villagers pierced the air. Suleiman had been observing the palace from a distance when the fire started. He could have used the chaos to his advantage, slipping past the guards while their attention was diverted. But as he watched villagers scramble to contain the fire, he felt an hard urge to help. Grabbing a bucket from a nearby canyon, Suleiman joined the effort. The work was grueling, the heat from the flames searing his skin, but he pushed through, driven by an unfamiliar sense of purpose. Amid the chaos, he found himself standing beside Halima. Her face was streaked with soot, her indigo gown damp and clinging to her frame, but she moved with the calm authority of a leader. "Quick, this way," she called, directing a group of villagers to safety. Her voice carried above the din, steady and reassuring. Suleiman followed her lead without question, helping her free a group of children trapped in a collapsing shack. When the fire finally extinguished, Halima turned to him, her chest heaving with exhaustion. "You are not from here," she said, her tone more curious than accusatory. Suleiman hesitated, then nodded. "No, but I couldn't stand by and do nothing." Halima's lips curved into a tired smile. "You've done more than must." "Thank you, Suleiman," he said, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions within him. "Well, Suleiman, Makoko owes you a debt of gratitude," she said, her smile lingering. Suleiman felt his chest tighten. For the first time in his life, he wished he was someone else, someone worthy of her admiration. The days following, the fire brought an odd sense of unease to Suleiman. The mission that had once felt straightforward had been complicated by Halima. Her presence lingered in his mind, unbidden and unwanted, yet impossible to dismiss. Disguised as a traveling merchant, Suleiman approached the palace with a bundle of spices wrapped in raw clothes. The guards at the gates, weary but unthreatened by his humble demeanor, waved him through. The courtyard buzzed with activity, servants carrying jugs of water, artisans polishing the golden motifs that adorned the entrance, and Halima herself, a commanding figure amidst the flurry. Halima spotted him almost immediately. She approached with a mix of curiosity and recognition, her movements graceful despite the weight of her stature. "Suleiman," she said, her tone both surprised and pleased. "The hero from the fire, what's bringing you here today?" Suleiman bowed slightly, his voice steady. "I trade in spices, princess. I heard your palace valued the finest, and I hope to offer mine." Halima's brows lifted as she examined his wares. "This looks exceptional. My father will want them for his meals," she said, her eyes studying him with a disarming intensity. "But tell me, Suleiman, what drives a man like you? First the fire, now this. You seem out of place, as though you belong to a different story." Her words sent a jolt through him. Did she sense his true purpose, or was she merely curious? "I'm only man trying to survive," he replied, evading her question. Halima smiled faintly, tilting her head. "Survival is one thing, but you seems to be searching for something more." Their conversation was interrupted by a servant summoning Halima to her father. She gave Suleiman one last lingering look before turning away, leaving him rooted to the spot. Her words stayed with him long after she disappeared into the palace. She had seen through his mask, catch the sight of the conflict he was trying so desperately to hide. For the first time since taking on the mission, Suleiman felt truly exposed, not by the sharp eyes of an enemy, but by the soft gaze of a woman who saw beyond his disguise. The moon hung low in the night sky, its silvery light reflecting off the lagoon as Suleiman sat on the weathered dock. The waters leaped gently at the wooden beams, their rhythm soothing yet relentless, like the question pounding in his mind. His dagger lay beside him, its blade catching the moonlight. It was a reminder of the mission he could not bring himself to complete. The image of Halima haunted him. Her laughter, her strength, her kindness. How could he take her father's life, knowing the pain it would cause her? But the alternative was unthinkable. The order of the Silent Fang demanded absolute loyalty. Failure meant death, not just for him, but for anyone who might have shielded him. As he stared at his reflection in water, Halima's voice broke through his thoughts. "You look like a man carrying the weight of the world." Suleiman turned, startled. Halima stood behind him, her indigo shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders to guard against the night's chill. She moved closer, her gaze steady but filled with concern. "Why are you here, Suleiman?" she asked softly. "You seem more like a man running from something than one looking to sell spices." Her questions cut deeper than any blade. Suleiman hesitated, then spoke, his voice low. "Have you ever felt torn between two paths, knowing that either choice will bring pain?" Halima studied him for a moment before sitting beside him. "Yes," she said finally. "My father often tells me that the hardest decisions define us, but you must follow your heart. It will never lead you astray." Her words filled him with equal parts, hope and despair. His heart screamed for her, but following it would mean betraying everything he had ever known. As Halima rose to leave, she placed a hand on his shoulder, a simple gesture that felt like both a blessing and a curse. The full moon rose, casting its pale glow over Makoko. The palace stood silent, its carved walls bathed in silver light. Suleiman moved like a shadow, his training guiding him as he slipped past the guards. The dagger was heavy in his hand, its weight a reminder of the life it was meant to take. His plan was meticulous. He had studied the guards' rotations, the weak points in the palace defenses, the layout of the King Yusuf chambers. Everything had been accounted for. Everything except Halima. As he approached the king's chambers, Halima stepped into his path. Her gown shimmered in the moonlight. Her experience a mix of surprise and suspicion. "Suleiman?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" Suleiman froze. The carefully constructed lie he had prepared dissolved on his tongue. "I came to see you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Halima's eyes narrowed. "No, you're not. You're lying. Who are you really?" The moment scratched between them, heavy with tension. Suleiman knew there was no escape. He lowered his gaze, his voice trembling as he confessed. "I am an assassin. I was sent to eliminate your father, but I can't do it, Halima. I won't." Halima's face hardened, her eyes flashing with betrayal. "You lied to me. You used me." Suleiman dropped to his knees, the dagger clattering to the floor. "I swear to you, I will not harm him. I will live and face the consequences. Just forgive me." Before Halima could respond, the guards appeared, seizing Suleiman and dragging him away. Halima followed, her mind racing with conflicting emotions. Anger, betrayal, but also a flicker of compassion. Suleiman knelt before King Yusuf. his hands bound, his head bowed. The guards stood in a tight circle around him, their weapons drawn. Halima stood to the side, her face pale but resolute. The king's voice was calm but laced with fury. "You dare to enter my palace with the intent to eliminate me? Who sent you?" Suleiman raised his head, meeting the king's gaze. "It does not matter who sent me. I failed them because I could not harm you. Your daughter has shown me the strength of your family and the goodness of your rule." Halima stepped forward. "Father, he has surrendered. He spared your life. Let us show him the mercy he could not give." The king studied Suleiman for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded. "We are banished from Makoko, assassin. If you are seen here again, you will be executed." Suleiman bowed his head. "Thank you." As the guard escorted him out of the palace, he glanced at Halima one last time. Her eyes held a mixture of pain and hope, a silent goodbye that he would carry with him forever. Suleiman left Makoko as the first rays of the dawn broke over the lagoon. The waterways that had once seemed like a battlefield now felt like a graveyard, holding the memories of what could never be. In the weeks that followed, Suleiman wandered aimlessly, a man without purpose or home, yet he felt a strange sense of peace. He had defied the order, spared a life, and found something worth dying for: love. Halima became queen years later, her reign marked by the strange and compassion. Thought she rarely spoke of the assassin who had once come to kill her father. She often thought of him. His story ached into her heart like a love written in blood. Kaya here, and it means a lot that you listened. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and comment. Goodbye, sweet friends. Take care always.